Welcome to the Every Thought Matters podcast, where truly every thought does matter. Join me and my guests to explore how they got to where they are and how their thoughts have changed their lives. So, as you know, click to subscribe, rate, review. That all helps me in growing this podcast to where I want it to be. So, thank you again for joining Every Thought Matters podcast. Tune in to this excellent episode with Carly Street, the award-winning writer of Fragile Storm, who is now working with Resurrection Films. And tune in as we talk about our thoughts and how the world is. And for all of you conspiracy theorists, there's an X-Files story on the back end that you're really going to love. So if you like Mulder and Scully, you're going to love this story. So tune in and enjoy the podcast. There you go. And that's when we're good. Welcome, Carly. Good to see you. Well, actually not see you because we're just recording audio, but anyway, nice to hear your voice again. I haven't talked to you in forever.
I know. It does feel like ages, doesn't it?
It's been a very long time. We used to do some FaceTime conversations way back in the day, but you know, how are things over there in the UK?
Okay, confusing at the minute.
Yeah.
Everybody's going a little bit crazy again for the second time, but I'm sure it'll settle down.
Yep. And the home is okay. Your husband's good. Your daughter's good. And I still can't remember your daughter's name. And that's just terrible of me.
Lily.
You know? Yeah.
Oh my God. She is growing up so fast now. She's getting taller than me. And she can do things on my phone. I've had a new phone for 2 days. She can do stuff on it that I have no idea how she is just so technically minded. And you know me, you know what I'm like. I am not.
You're not.
No,
yeah,
the opposite.
That's the fascinating thing about kids and how they process their thoughts. Their thoughts aren't like ours because they're still not programmed to what this should be. Meaning, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't have those thoughts yet of what, because by the time you're 18 or 19, you kind of pre-programmed set of thoughts of how things are going to be, and they don't look at that stuff that way, which I think is fascinating, and I think that's a great lead into what we want to talk about. It's just like how we use those thoughts, but I kind of think that's a neat way to get back to is just think about the world that way, where you discard the preconceived notions and then you come up with something really great. And then you're a ridiculously great creator. I mean, both of us, worked on Fragile Storm, and you wrote that, which I think is a stellar film, one of short of 30 awards on the film festival circuit. But tell me about what the thought process was when you started writing that.
It's a bit of a strange one, to be fair, because the scripts that people seem to like are the ones that normally, if you were going to teach somebody how to write a script or be a script writer or anything like that, you would tell them to do certain things and do certain patterns and go a certain way. But with that, and also Room 19, I kind of just did the opposite and just let my brain, my heart sort of lead over my brain, if that makes sense. So like Fragile Storm, for example, I read a poem that was on a lady's fridge when I used to do care work. And I was just making some food for her in the kitchen, just, while she was in the living room. And I just read this poem and it kind of just stuck in my mind. And it was about being forgotten. And because I dealt with all sort of Alzheimer's patients and stuff like that, that was all that it ever was just sort of fragmented stories, little strange memories. And it stayed with me for a couple of weeks. And then when I had a day off, I kind of just sat. I think I couldn't sleep. And I got up and I just wrote it. I just wrote like the first sort of draft or the first few scenes of it. This sounds disgusting. It was almost like throwing up on a page, just of ideas and thoughts and bleh.
But that's like, and then that's what you were, trying to teach me how to do with my TV series that I'm trying to write, is just to kind of throw up on the page, just put something out there And
Just get
then,
that out of your brain, because like Room
yes,
19, I did that in a week. The first draft of that was done in a week, and it hasn't
right.
actually changed that much. But that is literally just my brain exploding onto a page of random sort of noir ideas that had to come out. And
Right.
I could not rest or sleep until I physically got them out.
Yeah, and that's a fascinating thing because to me, and because I've read both of them, and obviously we both, the executive producer, and I put a lot of my own money into Fragile Storm, but I've also read Room 19, and I think Room 19 was like miles beyond Fragile Storm. Because I just think the more, and it has, in my mind, has aged extremely well because I think you sent that to me in 2017, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
not sure
while.
when you first wrote it. And the more I go to it, the more and I still have it somewhere on my hard drive. And yes, I have an NDA and all that good stuff, but I still think that's probably one of your best work.
Do you know what's weird about that though? Because I'd written that in like a week and I hadn't, planned it properly, and I thought it was quite disjointed. I just kind of needed to get it out so that I could move on to something else.
Right.
My husband read it. He has to be very, very gripped within like the first sort of 5 pages for him to actually want to sit and read it. So I gave him this to read. He said, "Oh, I think I gave him a sci-fi thing to read because I love sci-fi."
Yep. Yep.
And I gave him a sci-fi script to read, and he was just looking at me like, "Oh, I can read it, but I'm not really into it. What else have you got?" I said, "Well, I've got this piece of crap thing that I just." Literally I described it
Yeah.
like that, as this piece of crap thing. I was like, I kind of like the character. Do you want to take a look at that and see whether I can maybe, move the character to something else? Well, I'll tell you what, he must have read it in like 20 minutes. And he's not a big reader.
Yeah.
And he just sort of sat back in his chair and he was like, "That's brilliant." I was like, "Really? I mean, it's
Yeah.
not." And he's like, "No, it is." I said, "Nah." And then I couldn't understand why he liked it. And weirdly enough, I think maybe a week or two later, I sent it to you because I thought, what is he going on about this script for? Because he kept telling me about it. He kept saying, "Oh, I love this." When it was, when she was sat at the table and the cutlery, and he kept
Yep.
mentioning specific things. And I thought, he's definitely read it. He's not trying to
Right.
creep.
Yeah.
And that's when I sent it to you, I think. I was like, "Oh, I got this thing. Think it might be a little crap. Can you maybe
Right.
take a look, see what you think?" Because I knew that you would tell me if you didn't think it had value. I knew that you would tell me.
Right. Yeah. Because I don't like to BS, and that's how we work, and that's why
Yeah.
we got lucky that you got to be there on set when we filmed Fragile Storm and got to meet Lance and all that good stuff. But then we became fast friends after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I still think, and my first inclinations on Room 19 were not the best, but to your husband's credit and being a former producer, you got to be into that story within the first 5 to 10 pages. Otherwise, they're going to put it on the side and they're not going to read it because you got it. And that did. Room 19 got it. It did it. I didn't put it down, even though I had technical notes about it, but whatever, that's still, I still think the story, and to this day, and considering everything I've read and everything I've listened to a ton of podcasts over the pandemic with my work, and I've read a lot of stuff that tie into Room 19, which I think it's so relevant. And I looked it up today before this podcast taping and saw it's in pre-production in IMDb, which makes me really, really happy because I really do think that's your best work to date. Doesn't mean you're not going to make something better, because I do think this is your best.
I think if I could, I've spent years trying to be a serious science fiction writer, and it's never, ever worked. I just overcomplicate sci-fi. I just can't, for some reason, my brain and my thought process just keeps pulling me back to these kind of sort of random, twisty dramas. Sort of like dark, morbid, sort of slightly amusing, but twisted, sort of.
Yeah.
I don't know why. That's just where it goes. That's just my puke on a page. Is that?
And that's what we both know when it comes to being passionate and literally following your thoughts, with Every Thought Matters podcast, following those thoughts of let yourself puke on the page, which is what you're trying to get me to do with my kind of sci-fi I don't know, sci-fi. Would you consider that sci-fi? I don't
Um,
know. I don't know
I
what
think
it is.
maybe.
It's a period drama with a little bit of science fiction in it. But, and you're trying to get me to do that and trying to get me to just puke on that page, which I think is great because if we got, I mean, like I said, you won that Palm Street Films script writing contest. And then, the kicker of winning it was going to get produced, and it was produced, and then everything lined up for me and magically to land in LA and help actually fund it and I'll actually get my hands dirty and actually make the film. So I just think that we have these thoughts and then we have to like shepherd them, like you're laying late at night and just all of a sudden you have these thoughts like, I got to get this out of my head. It's starting to bother the rest of my day. I'm trying to, go ahead.
Sometimes it's just like a piece of dialogue. It's just like a sentence.
Yep.
I think that was what Room 19 was, I think I had something in my head and it wasn't even a scene. It was the character and he was just sort of sat in the motel room and he just said something and it was that sentence and I sort of almost formed a script around that moment. It just started whirring and had to come out. And sometimes I feel like you have this one sort of image or this one sort of mannerism of a character or just one specific detail. And I think if you threw that down, then you would start to pick up sort of more paint and throw more down. And it would in a similar way, it would have all sort of formed around this one perfect image that you had or that you wanted out of the whole thing.
And that's the funny thing too, because as you said before with script writing, there's 10,875 script writing people out there in the world trying to make money teaching you how to write. And the way you have done Fragile Storm, which won a ton of awards, and I think Room 19 is going to win a ton of awards as well. You did a vomit draft, but if you just started with one thing, and if you've ever listened to any sort of scriptwriter podcasts or interviews, that's how most people have gotten their things done because they just, it's write what you know, and you just get that thought and you see a scrap of paper and all of a sudden it's there. And I've listened to a ton of things about that, from anything from Joe Rogan talking to people in Hollywood to him talking to scientists. They just come up with this one idea and all of a sudden it's boom, it's way out of left field and they just can't stop writing because they literally, like you, want to get it out of their head. Mm-hmm. And with your thoughts and when it comes to your writing, is it something you actually feel like you're receiving that thought or are you actually thinking it? Because that's a question I always ask.
That's a strange one because I don't do it so much anymore, but I used to just have thousands and thousands of notebooks and I would sit very old fashioned and I would handwrite stuff out, spider diagrams, keywords, loads of different things. And the strange thing is depending what sort of project it was or where the idea would come from, I would write these things in different handwriting, not on purpose. I wouldn't intentionally do it. And I always wondered for a while when I was doing, because you can go back through them and, like when people have multiple personalities and you can see them writing in different styles. If you flick back through my sort of script notebooks, it looks like that. It made me think, where are these coming from? Am I tapping into different people, or is something feeding this, or I don't know.
I think that's cool to me because, it's also, I've never thought of that, but now that I think about that, I think that's a great, if you're a scriptwriter listening to this podcast, I think that's a fascinating tool to write notes about your protagonists and your antagonists the way they would, but with their mannerisms, like on a pen and paper too, because there's been scientific studies about pen and paper as opposed to the computer keyboard. There's so much electronic interference between you and that keyboard, but there's none between that pen and that paper or a pencil and paper.
Yeah, it's just energy. It's just going straight from your mind, straight down through your arm to the paper.
Yeah. and write those characters in each of, like, if your protagonist is a messy person, write that stuff in a messy, you know, cursive. But if they're a neat freak, write it in really small, perfect letters, and go on, and you're going to find and reveal who your characters really are just from doing that, which I think is fascinating. And that's neat that you look back on those script notes and go, well, I don't know where these came from, but they sure look different. This one looks different. This Fractal Storm one, Room 19, you know, and so on.
And also, there's always something there that I didn't see. Lily, she was going through. In lockdown. She needed some paper or something. She needed something to do some homework or do something that because she writes stories as well now. At the minute, she has got crazy, twisted story mind. So she's been doing that. And she went through my notepads because surely I'm going to have a piece of paper. I've got a forest sat there. Surely there's a piece of paper. Have a look, see what you can find. Just don't bin anything. And she came over to me with like loads of random she'd been sat there reading them, and she came over to me with loads of random sort of pages that were open. And when I was rereading them, I was like, oh shit, I totally left that bit out. I thought, being such an important quote, and it sat there looking at me, and I never put it in the script.
That's
so
funny.
I go back to it maybe 5-6 years later, and I better put that quote in, and then you start tinkering again. You're I remember this. Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, that's neat, because then you go, all right, so then a little homework, and you just put a thought in your brain to say, hey, go over those notes before I, you know, publish that final draft of my script, and go see if I missed one thing. Because there's going to be that one thing where, and I've done that too. Like with my story I'm working on, I'm like, I forgot I even wrote that.
Yeah.
And I've got scribbles everywhere, and I'm not as organized as most people, but I've got scribbles everywhere. And before you do that, you just want to go, look at all of that, coagulate it together and go, did I miss anything?
Yeah. And you've always missed something.
Oh, yeah. Always. Even if you're writing, like I write a lot of op-ed type of stuff too, and I write stuff obviously for my coaching, which is, you know, aligned with, you know, helping my co-creators, which everybody else calls clients. I just call them co-creators. And I do a lot of writing for that, but I'll still go through that stuff and go, I forgot about that. I did that just yesterday. I'm like, I forgot to put that little note in there, because I wrote just on a little small community I'm on. I wrote the top 10 things from the entertainment industry that I got. And obviously, you know, there was 10 things, and a couple of them were Fragile Storm. But then I thought, I'm getting ready to have some coffee and oatmeal. And I thought, oh man, I forgot that I got to, you know, help and record ADR in a Paramount sound room right on the lot. We got access to that. And I'm like, most people don't get that ever. Mm-hmm. You know, most people go through their filmmaking career, making films that mean something to them, but most people I've heard, they do ADR, which is basically redoing the voice, but syncing that with the lips and recording it, and then mixing that audio with the actual footage that you shot on camera. Most people do it like in a car or some sort of soundproof room. We were in a soundproof room with Paramount Studios, the engineer right there, the whole thing, just recording a couple of lines just for my film Funny Fair. So some of that stuff was ADR from the Paramount sound room, and I'm like, I forgot to add that to my little top 10 list, because that's a really big deal. Anybody who's ever worked in the industry knows that that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So you just
and it's a really cool film as well, by the way. You should tell people.
I love
that.
Oh, Funny Fair actually went out to Vimeo, and if you just search Funny Fair on Vimeo, you'll find it. I took the password off of it because it's that time of year for a nice little clown story. But that was fun. That was like an amazing experience to sit in an ADR room at Paramount Studios. You know, there's got to be some legends that were in that room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I got to do that. But to your point about the notes, and I forgot that. I had totally forgotten that, because that's a huge deal. Obviously, it was a huge deal to meet Lance and talk to him and be on set with him and whatever. But that's still a huge deal.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you can share the moments, can't you? I don't think you have to place one over the other.
no, you
I think
don't.
it's
I
good to
don't do
share
that.
them. Yeah, I think it's good to have like just positive
I did share
experiences.
them, right, and I did share that with some people that are not even in the entertainment industry. Like, wow, really? You? And they were just like, whoa, that's wild. Because I got a little community where it's no politics or anything like that. It's just about a bunch of people talking about, recipes and other kind of stuff. And I just write just so I can get that, like you with your screenwriting. I got to get stuff out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And none of it's like crazy stuff, but it's just like, top 10 things. I just think that's fascinating. I wrote a story about me in a baseball glove, and it resonated with them to the point where everybody else wrote more stories about it, which I thought was
Cool.
really cool. Yeah, I wrote this story about this baseball glove, and all of a sudden 4 or 5 other people in the community would just decided they shared little baseball stories. I'm like, cool. It was neat. But I got to get that stuff out, and I got notes like you about my TV show. I've got a movie that I worked on back in 2015 that I was writing. But all of a sudden, it came to me out of nowhere, and that's where I personally believe. And I don't know. I just think I've gotten to the point where I believe that we receive thoughts, we don't think them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just received a thought again about that script, and I don't know why.
Well, you got to act upon it.
Mm-hmm.
You trust it for a reason.
Yep. And I could talk to you for days because it's fascinating to me because I look back and I'm trying to rewrite my story because the stories we tell ourselves are our thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. So growing up and whatever childhood you have and whatever childhood I have all those thoughts, and those are the stories that we tell ourselves. And how we interact with people are just like I work, the world's largest retailer, and I tell a story about myself there, and I know it's not a good story. It's not a happy story because I've been on top of the world. I've been, on a set, with arguably one of the best actors, in the world. But here I am working at the world's largest retailer, and our thoughts that we've been programmed to affect our story and how we actually bring energy to the world, which is why I truly like you, because God, I'm talking with my hands and everything. You bring out the really positive energy in me. And I go back and I look at my story that I talk about with my retail job, and I'm going, that's not a good story. So I have to rewrite those thoughts. Have you ever had those kind of challenges with what you're doing and where you're at with any of your writing? Because I know you're not just a screenwriter. You've written novels and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was hard. Yeah. Theatre plays was that came out of nowhere. That was just an idea that somehow just seated in my brain, and then God bless the guys at Resurrection Films. I just get these silly ideas in my head and decide we're doing this. And before anybody's realised it's a bad idea, we're already halfway in doing it.
Yeah.
We're too far to back out because I've already, I've gone. I've bolted. The horse has gone out of the stable, and
right.
It's me.
Yep.
But then that can be quite challenging, especially because I'm like you. I don't like Resurrection's doing really well, but it's a very young company. It takes a lot of focus and a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
I have to work 9 to 5 to make sure there's a cushion there for anything that needs for family and for company and for stuff like that. So it is hard sometimes to keep the positivity because particularly during the pandemic, my husband and I were working just full time, just non-stop to make sure that we had a cushion because you never know. At the time, you didn't know. If you had a job, you're lucky.
Right.
But obviously then that meant that the creative aspect suffered a lot because either your brain just couldn't deal with it. It just wasn't functioning. And I never figured out whether it was sort of the aura of what's going on generally in the world,
right,
being tired and run down, or just having a sort of slide in priority and my thoughts going into, you need to box that off for a second because it will distract you. Does that make sense?
it does, because it just means that you're normal, because pretty much anybody that's gone through this is feeling the same thing. And I know, truthfully, I'm very blessed, you know, like I said, and that goes back to your thoughts and telling the story, just like I was talking about. I got to tell a better story about that job, because there's parts of that job that I truly love. I love my customers. I have customers that just walk by the deli counter and say hi to me, even though they're not buying anything, but you know, they just want to know that they appreciate me. And there's great things about it, and I just have to rewrite that story, because
and it is hard to do. It's taken me a long time. It's taken me a long, long time to be able to do that and be comfortable with doing that. Because, like, you know, if you're a creative person and you go somewhere, you go to a job, for example, well, it can be anywhere. If you go somewhere and people go, oh, well, what do you do? Naturally, the first thing you want to say is not, oh, I work in this place. It's, oh, well, actually, I've got this film company, and you go off on a little tangent, and you will know the look that people give you where they just go, all right, okay. And that's soul crushing. And I think that's the thing that makes you feel negative about the other aspects. So, for example, the day-to-day 9 to 5, because you're already anticipating that face, if that makes sense, before you've even said anything. It's how I feel anyway. And it's took me a long time to be able to say, and what? Look at my website. You know, just simple things that I can just feel, but I can just say it, feel happy, walk away.
Well, it's the same thing with that, and I'm done the same, because before the pandemic, I would go to the little hole-in-the-wall bar down here, and I had no problem telling people, you know, I work there at, you know, that world's largest retailer in the deli. Come say hi, you know. And I still don't. I don't look down upon myself. So, but it is a challenge to rewrite that story in your head using your thoughts and letting them go and say, yeah, I work there, but I also am a holistic life coach, and now I have a podcast, which the podcast part of me, and I just am ecstatic that I'm doing this, and because I've got a laundry list of people that I just want to talk to. You know, and I just think this, to me, is fun. I mean, seriously, as much as Fragile Storm was fun, it was a lot of work, but this is fun, and where I get to be, just as you know, I get to be a producer, and I have to produce this. I have to produce the guests, I have to produce the audio, and I have to merge it, and I have to submit it, put it, you know, last week it got accepted on iTunes, so now it's going to be on iTunes, so that's great, but I have to do all of that, which is, for me, fun. It's fun for me. I love doing all of that. Audio editing, like we talked about before the call, it's like, well, I'm not sure about that. But I'll figure it out enough to know, but as a producer of anything, whether it's film, whether it's theater, and that theater project I thought of yours was really brilliant. But by the way, you thought it was a mucky little thing, and I'm like, no, it was a brilliant idea, and it was out of left field. But that's your creative genius that you have, and like you said, just going back to I got a 9 to 5, but I'm with Resurrection Films, and so I think your creative genius, when you start owning that, the 9 to 5 thing doesn't bother you as much. Same here with mine. Once this podcast gets going, and once, you know, I secure some more co-creators with my coaching practice, and, you know, it's all on. That's the life I want to live.
Yeah. I have to admit that I find podcasting incredibly fun. I didn't think I would. But this is another one of those crazy ideas that just, you wake up one day, hey, Jason, how about a podcast? And then he's on the same, his thought, I swear, like I can ping my thoughts from my brain straight to his, so that by the time he wakes up with my question of, how about a podcast? Or how about theatre play? Or how about this bit of nonsense? He's already got it, absorbed it, and he's like, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and it's fun because what I'm, you know, right now, this is only, truthfully, I've done one solo episode and then one guest episode. So you're my second guest episode, and I just see so many endless possibilities for this, and I've truthfully listened to a lot of podcasts over this pandemic. Just, I thought, okay, because after we close, I can just put on my headphones and I just turn on the podcast, and I've listened to a lot of stuff, especially around the pandemic and all of that, and even the current wacky political climate. I've listened to a lot on all. I've become so much more educated because of it, which is fantastic. And now I just listen to it, and I remember this distinctly. I was working and I was cleaning, washing dishes, and I'm listening to Joe Rogan interview Miley Cyrus, and I was hooked. Like, this is what I got to do. I knew in the middle of that, that's what I want to do. I want to, because as someone who knows me, I'm comfortable with talking to people in person, mm-hmm. and not just in the actual physical, but even on the phone. I help people relax because I don't bring, and I've learned this about myself, just like you've learned about that 9 to 5 thought process. I've learned my thought process is that when I meet people, I offer zero resistance to their being. And mm-hmm. when I do a podcast, I do the same thing. You don't feel any resistance from me to say what you should say or what you shouldn't say. You're naturally being yourself, which lends itself to be a perfect vehicle for who I am as a human being, to be truthful with you. I think this format, the podcast format, lends that self. And with you and Jason and yours, it lends itself for you guys to talk about, like one of your favorite things. I think you could talk for days about is this film noir, which is one of your...
God, yes, we could.
Right.
There's so much of, there's a limit. People would be like, no, it's never ending.
No, but that's what the fun thing about this format is. You can just sort of do, just going back to like your screenwriting, you can do a little vomit draft and just let it sit out there. And I didn't want this curated. I don't want it to be perfect. I want it to be real.
Yeah.
So,
that's what we did with our podcast. I think the reason why people like it so much is not because we're talking really intelligent stuff about film noir. It's because we're talking absolutely batshit crazy, nonsensical stuff about film noir and random stuff in general. Because we do go off on a little tangent very easily. But I think people feel like they could be sat there with us, enjoying that tangent, or not.
That's what I want to be able to. That's what I want to be able to create, is where people feel like they're just sitting with you and me, listening to us talk, having mm-hmm. a beer or having a Coke or whatever. They're having some, and they're just listening to us go back and forth. That's the format that I want to create. Yeah. And I know 2 episodes in, when I got done with my last episode last week, I felt like I just walked off a film set. It was the same feeling, Carly.
Oh, awesome.
I know. It was the same exact euphoria that I can't describe it to people who've never been in the entertainment industry, but when you're on a film set, the thought process is everybody's working towards the same goal. And I remember the guy who was the executive producer of Forrest Gump. I'm pretty sure it was this. He had a quote, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but he says, "Why did you think Forrest Gump was so successful?" Because everybody in the cast and crew were working for the same goal. Because mm-hmm. I've been on film sets where it's not about everybody working towards the same goal, which is that entire movie, beginning to end, good sound, good hair, makeup, good craft services where people get fed properly.
Mm-hmm. So they feel energized and...
Right. They got the right kind of, food, that they need for their specific diets and so on. If everybody's going towards the same goal, then that's so magical. Mm-hmm. And when I got done with that podcast last week, I felt that same thing. I'm like, wow, I was on an endorphin high like you wouldn't believe. And I will be today, because I can already feel like I'm getting in that mode, because even though the red light's on, we're recording, I don't care. And that's how it should be. And I don't know how many episodes in you and Jason into your podcast, and tell my audience about it so they can go find it too, by the way.
Oh God, we're let me just check. We did a couple of episodes recently for series 2. I think we've got 20 episodes because we've got a couple of doubles, so it's hard to keep track. But I think we've got 20 episodes of series 1, and then we've got a one-off special that's coming in the next week or so, and then we're gonna get into series 2. And it's quite exciting with I can't say it, Noirember. It's like a little hashtag thing on
Noir
Twitter
November?
and Facebook. Yeah,
Noirvember?
Noirvember.
Noirvember, huh?
Yeah, celebrating all
What's the
kinds of
name of your
film noir.
podcast?
The
What's the name of it?
Speakeasy Noircast.
It's called Speakeasy Noircast. And where can people find it?
Everywhere. Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, Google Cast,
Great.
Radio Republic.
Great. Nice.
YouTube as well. It's coming to YouTube soon.
Yeah, I mentioned I will be at that point, at some point where I'll do video as well as audio. But for some reason, people like YouTube views of people doing podcasts.
Yeah, it's hard. We've not gone with that because it's quite tricky for us.
It is.
Either he's going to be in bright sunshine and I'm going to be in miserable darkness, which is probably quite accurate, to be fair.
Right.
But it's quite tricky for us for the times that we have to do it, for me to not look like a zombie and for him to not spill stuff on camera.
Yeah.
So we've opted for trying to come up with other ways. So it's on YouTube because there are some people, I mean, I wouldn't personally, but there are a lot of people that do kind of like to play YouTube videos and just listen. So we've got some like animation that we're sort of experimenting with, and then we've got some where it's just clips and fancy patterns to make you feel tranquil. There's a few different things that we're trying. I think it'll take a while to find the right fit.
I've seen that too, because I listen, like when I ride my bike to work, I listen to Abraham Hicks, which is Law of Attraction stuff. And I never look at the videos, but some of those videos are just the animation thing of the people talking.
Yeah. We've
I don't know how to generate those. Yeah, I don't know how to make those, but those seem cool if you need a visual going along with the audio. But I don't know. So you guys are everywhere, and you're 20 episodes in on your first season, or what did you call it, series?
Yeah, well, I say series, he says season. I guess you say season as well.
Yeah, so your first season's in out there, and you're 20 episodes in, and you're about to start Noir November, so that's kind of cool. And now you've got Room 19, which is in pre-production. What else you got going on?
We've got a few things. We just did a second book. That's just gone. That's in Walmart. And
what?
What is it? Is it Barnes and Noble? Is that a thing over there?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so that must be. Jason tells me these things and forgets that I don't understand America. So I'm just like, yeah, okay, is that cool? Is that like W.H. Smith? I don't know.
Right.
So that's the second book. What else have we got? Oh, we're working to try and do a horror before the end of the year, called Old Sins, which I can't really say too much about that because the story might change because we're constantly working on it. Have been for about 3 months now. Nice. Working on a second documentary to follow Millennium. We did The Curious Case. We're going to try and get that into an anthology film as well, tying up a few loose ends with a few other bits. Hopefully that makes it before the end of the year. Definitely on Amazon. Nice. And that's all with Resurrection Films? Yes. Yes. Nice. We are everywhere, saturating everybody's brains, whether they want it or not. Yeah, and you can find Resurrection Films on Instagram, by the way. So for the folks listening, that's where it's at. And any information about that, that's probably for me, that's your go-to point, where Resurrection Films, and that's kind of what will lead you to the podcast. It'll lead you to the books, and it'll lead you to everything else.
which is great because that's where I find most of your information from, is that particular Instagram account. So
Yeah, we're
what
having
else?
fun with it. We're trying to jazz it up a little bit, so there'll be things that are
It's
there and
hard.
then they're suddenly gone. But yeah, it's quite fun. I like Instagram. I like the people. I like the people on there. I like Twitter as well. We have a nice community of people on there as well that we can every now and again we all just jump on and have such a laugh with people. So
Good,
nice.
which is what you need. Yeah, I like Instagram. Like most of mine stuff on there is curated, and I use Canva for most of my graphics, and then just I'll write something and then I'll post it and you know, I've I've just finished this book called Irresistible by Adam Alter, which is published in 2017, but it's very relevant today. It's about our social media addiction. So I've really tried to limit most of my social media stuff that I've got going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, like, literally I deleted Facebook and Twitter off of my phone, which freed up so much of my time. It's not even funny. I'll go on their Facebook and Twitter and, Messenger, like in that, because that's how you and I communicate and do that. But I pretty much eliminated that, which eliminates a lot of clutter in my brain, because
Yeah,
I'm all
and
about cleaning up my
negativities.
brain. Oh, they're so, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I did a test a while ago actually, because I was unsure how people. I was trying to share some stuff and trying to, like you do, trying to like get a little bit of promotion going, sort of grassroots style. And it wasn't happening. Nothing was happening. I thought, well, my friends and family can't be that ignorant and awful. And I did a couple series of tests, and anything positive that I posted didn't seem to be showing
right,
up in people's feeds unless I specifically directed them to it or tagged them in it. Anything slightly negative that I put on there, I was getting, 10 comments, 2 messages, likes, this, and I thought that's what was making me think, how can they be so, is it concern? Is it like, what is it? And anything negative that I posted was showing in people's timelines, even people that didn't really interact with that much, people that I used to work with, 10, 15 years
right.
ago that don't even, haven't even seen Lily. And I was thinking, how are they seeing that, but they're not seeing my request to just like a page?
Yeah,
And that really put me off social media, to be honest, because I thought if that's the algorithm it's showing to people,
yeah,
why can't it share the joy? Why can't it share the happiness? Why can't it share the the positivity? But the minute that it dips, it's like it just feeds. If that was real and not a test, can you imagine how much energy I getting fed that was negative when I was already
right.
feeling negative already? It just made me think, oh, that's a bit dangerous territory.
It is. And it's hard to do that because there's a lot of, I don't know. It's interesting because, I don't know, there's just a lot of people focus on negative external things when,
Mm-hmm.
for me, just my own soapbox, it's my podcast, I can say this, is I believe people just need to go back in and change your thoughts, change the world, but change it to your thoughts and your world, because the reality you see is the reality that you receive. And if you get rid of most of that external stuff, you're good to go. And then
Yeah.
you're not, feeling like you're living in a bad Black Mirror episode. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is there was that one Black Mirror episode where basically it was the killer bee, mechanical killer bee ones that was brought up in a podcast I listened to yesterday. Like, oh, I forgot about that. I got to watch that again. Because it feels like sometimes we're living in a simulation or something, which we're not, but it's just like, you're just feeding me all this negative information. I don't want that negative information.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I've deleted most of that stuff off of my,
Yeah.
where I
It's
can't carry it with
hard.
me.
It's hard to block it out as well. I mean, for Halloween, just gone,
Right.
we spent a great deal of time doing, Halloween makeup and things in the house, because just simply for the fact to teach Lily that you don't need a stupid filter to show people that you don't know that
Right.
you've had a nice time at Halloween. Why don't we skip the filter, try and actually do the makeup, ourselves, and then take a real picture? Why do we need to have a filter of us pouting when all we've done all night is pout into our phone. It doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I'm just old. I don't know. I think I'm just a miserable old woman. It doesn't make sense to me.
But...
And I don't want her relying on unrealistic filters that she's going to judge herself to. So I thought, right, we're going to nip this in the bud straight away since, we had to give in and get her a phone. Now she has access to this. And we just had so much fun and just so much of a laugh and so many genuine compliments as well that we weren't even looking for, just because we actually did it, got off our backsides and did it ourselves. It didn't take long. It wasn't a lot of effort. I didn't go and buy anything that we didn't have. And it scares me because people that hide behind these filters and things like that, if they just went and did their own thing and tried it themselves, they'd probably get more positive energy back because they've done something different and tried it themselves. You know what I mean?
I do, because, I was just receiving some thoughts about that, because it just, that goes to me personalizing that. It's like, that's about this podcast. There's no filters. Like you just heard Ginny, barking, and I'm like, my first thought was, oh, that's going to be on the podcast. And my second thought was, so what?
Mm-hmm.
Who cares? It's my dog.
Yeah.
Whatever. If you can, it's great. So, and there's no filter there. And I don't know. I just enjoy not having to live with that filter. And I'm learning more and more how to do that, because I'm a lifelong people pleaser. I'm a people pleasing addict personally, or I should say a recovering people pleaser. So learning to have no filter and not being mean and saying, I don't care what other people think, but I don't allow other people's opinion of me to alter how I think. Right.
Yeah.
It's like a virus. I mean, we got COVID, but that's a bigger virus than COVID, because it's just, in a sense, in a personal sense, not in a health sense, but allowing other people's opinions of you to affect you, that's not a good thing. And that's how you can get better at this world. And that's why some of the people I look up to, like Joe Rogan and Bridget Phetasy and like Mina Kimes, she does sports, but she does podcasts and she's so great at it. Dan Patrick does it really, really well. Dan Patrick knows how to make people feel at ease when he does it. And he's a sports guy in the U.S., so you probably don't know who it is, which is fine.
But I'll just do what I normally do and go, yes.
Right.
I'm going to pass for an American one day.
Oh, yeah, whatever. But people that are on podcasts, like probably Jason probably makes you feel like you're just having a conversation and you're not even recording.
Yeah. Oh, he still rips the crap out of me like he would generally on the phone.
Right.
And me him. Yeah.
I know, but isn't that great though? Because
yeah.
I don't even what was the story? How did you two even? I know you met on social media, and then you've actually met in person because you went to film.
Yeah.
To Vancouver once, right?
Oh, see, this story is like a prime example of I always loosely believed, but after that, I was like, I'm sold. I'm gonna, everybody needs to jump on my bandwagon because this is a thing, and it's very similar to what you say. Every thought matters. You are what you think. You are what you think, and it's funny how things. If you keep believing and you keep envisioning something, even it might be absolutely ridiculous, but eventually I think it will loop back round, because that happened to me. So I'd met Jason through social media, through Troy.
Yep.
I was talking to Troy about like some scripts and stuff. You should just have a little chat. And he said, I've got this in room 19 again. He said, I've got this weird little script that my husband thinks is all right. And I'd said, by this time I'd sent it to you. And I was like, well, Kelly thinks it's all right. So 2 people telling me that it's not too bad. I was like, but it's neo-noir. It's like film noir. I don't know what to do with it. And he went, I'll stop you straight away. Because he doesn't like film noir. And he said, I'm not reading it. I'm not reading it. I'm not a fan. I won't get it.
Right.
But I've got the guy for you. He was like, give me a couple of days. Give me the script. And I'll be back in touch. And the guy that he was talking about was Jason.
Right.
So Jason read it, and then we ended up on the phone, and it was just like, it was the weirdest thing. It was as if we'd known each other an entire lifetime. You know what I mean? We were just,
Yep.
everything just clicked. And he was saying what he was envisioning before I could describe what I was envisioning. And they were both the same things.
No.
And we were kind of quoting the same films and the same sort of visuals and actors and everything.
Yep.
And it was just like, oh my good Lord, where have you been?
Yeah, but it was
And
at
it
the
turns
right
out,
time at the right place.
exactly. And it turns out he'd been looking for a neo-noir film script for ages.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. And then as we got talking more, it turned out that we'd been writing the same things, just slightly differently for years. So he sent me this, he said, I've got this, do you want to read some of my stuff? I was like, yeah, do you want to read some of my stuff? Like two little kids.
Right, yeah, right, sure.
Yeah. You know what it's like when you find a new friend and you're like, oh, look at this, look at that. So I'm like, oh, I've got this sci-fi idea about this Area 51 thing. And he's like, shut up, I've got a sci-fi idea about this Area 51 thing. Mine's a film, sure. So I was like, mine's a TV series. What's it called? Dreamland. What's yours called? Dreamland. What?
Are you kidding me?
Nope.
Wow.
There was that. There was, oh God, there was a few. There was a couple of horrors as well where they would basically, when you boiled it down, they were the same thing. But, you know, maybe his was located in a hotel where mine was located in a car.
Right.
Or, you know, we were both kind of dancing with one location, weird stories that just weren't, neither of us had them there.
Right.
So then as soon as we started chatting, we were able to kind of like combine scripts as well at one point to make one sort of finish one. And it was so creepy. And we had this idea of starting the company, you know, and toying with it. And they were filming the last bit of the Millennium documentary in Vancouver in December.
Right.
And they said, oh, you know, why don't you come out? It'd be really fun.
Right.
We can all meet up. We can sort out if we're doing this company or not. So yeah, I've always wanted to go to Vancouver. It's like my spiritual home. I was so excited.
It is. Yep.
So by some miracle, my husband manages to find some flight tickets that are just enough that we have.
Yep, I remember that.
Yep. So we're all set to go. Everything's happening. We're all excited. And then on our way to the airport, we had the worst snowstorm, I think, in Britain's history for the past, 20 years. Even though we left 10 hours before we were meant to be at the airport, we could not get out of Birmingham. We got stuck in, it was like getting stuck in a down pipe. You couldn't get out. Once you got in, we could not get out. We had people pushing the car. We had vans, lorries, cars were just spinning around like they were on an ice rink. It was horrendous, and there was no way we were getting there. It was not happening. I was crying in the car, streets panicking because I'm crying. Mm-hmm. And so we eventually managed to get out. We thought, what do we do? Just keep driving. Let's just go to the airport. We're too far. If we turn back, it's going to be 5 hours and we're going to have to go back through that again. Let's just keep driving to London.
Right.
At least we can pull over. So we carried on going. Now, all the way I'd been on the phone with the company for my ticket because we booked it through third party. So there's nothing they could do. We had no cover, nothing. It was basically tough shit. We couldn't have the money back because they hadn't declared that the flights weren't flying.
Oh, man.
So we were screwed. I even spoke to Air Canada on the phone and there's nothing we can do. All you can do is give up your ticket. If you're 100% not going to be there, the only thing you can do is give up your ticket. And that is just you being a good person so that somebody else can take your seat. Fuck it. Wow. Give up the seat. Right. You know, we're not getting on it. Whatever. So he gets there and I'm crying in floods of tears, dragging my little suitcase over all these people that are marooned in London Airport.
Right. Yes.
It's like something out of a film. It's horrendous. And my husband walked to the desk and he just went, is there any chance at all that I can buy another ticket to Canada? Right. We missed it. You know, we were stuck in Birmingham. Let me know how much it is and I will see if I can get the money. And the woman just looks at him and went, okay, what flight were you on? She gives her the details. She just looked at him and went, that's fine. Air Canada have waived all of their transfer fees today. We can get you on a Vancouver flight in 2 hours. Is that okay? What?
That's more than okay.
Are you kidding me? And I was like, straight away, boom, I was at the counter like, excuse me, what? How much is this going to cost? And she's going, no, it's absolutely fine. 2 people gave up 2 people aren't going to make it onto the flight we can put you on, and they've given up their seat so you can take it. What? Are you for real?
Serendipity.
So we got on the plane, managed to get there, finally meet the guys, have an awesome time, and the most random thing to happen out of all of this was that they somehow managed to get me on the X-Files set. I've been
I remember you telling me.
Yep, I've been a lifelong X-Files fan. Chris Carter was my writing idol when I first started.
Right.
And so you're talking, I was like 12. You're talking from 12 to then.
Mm-hmm.
The most random, and I used to always imagine myself on the X-Files set with Chris Carter. I never wanted to be an actor. You know what I'm like. I never want to be an actor. I'm not an in front of the camera person. No, it's not me. I wanted to be there with a clipboard, near Chris Carter just being involved.
Right.
And oh my God, I was an entire day. I was sat right behind him for an entire day, not able to speak. I got to watch everything. He even he knew my name. And I was just on cloud 9. How in the hell did this circle happen?
Your thoughts?
Yeah, because we had such an impossible journey. We should not have made it there.
No,
and we did make it there. And then to have that, we didn't go for that. That's something that Troy, God bless his heart, sorted out for me the day before. And I still didn't believe him. I didn't believe it was happening.
I wouldn't have believed him either, personally. And I know Troy, so.
I didn't believe it was happening until Jason was like, are you getting ready? Are you coming? And then all of a sudden this car pulled up. Oh my God. What? Did we get in there? And he's like, yeah, we get in there. Oh shit, there's free water, mineral water in this car. Oh my God, where are we going? And that's where it was.
Wow. But to me, that's about literally changing your thoughts changed your world, because you just believed that you had this idea that was, worthwhile. And I'm kind of like Troy. I'm not a big film noir fan, but I'm a big Carly Street fan. And I really am.
It's got a big one of you.
Right. And, I'm just, that is just you manifesting something by putting it out there and then forgetting about it and letting it go. And that's what I do in my coaching. I just tell people, write it out and then let it go.
Yeah.
And then that, to me, the X-Files thing was the cherry on, like all of that. Cause that's just, you believed in it, that the serendipity of those 2 people not needing those seats for you guys to drive, what was it, 6 hours to London, which is not exactly easy driving, by the way.
No.
And
especially in a snowstorm.
In a snowstorm, thank you very much. We're not talking country driving.
Yeah, you could not have made up this. If I told the story, people would be like, yeah, right. No, honestly, it was that dramatic. That sounds
like more of a Sandra Bullock film than it does sound like anything else.
Yeah, with Ryan Reynolds. Yep.
Right, Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds, right.
Yep.
Yeah, Street is Ryan Reynolds and you're Sandra Bullock. And the rest. But still, you put your thoughts out there and believed in what you wanted, and that just connected you. Through Troy, who happens to work with Lance Henriksen, who's in Franchel Storm, which is how you got to know Troy. Just to circle back with my listeners, who like we were talking about, Troy, he works with Lance, and that's how you know him, and put you in touch with Jason, who works with Lance on the Millennium Project. It's a documentary about that TV show, correct? Mm-hmm. And which Lance starred in and was nominated for a couple, I think 1 or 2 Emmys for that role that he played on that particular show. And all of that led you to Jason, which leads you to your podcast, led you to the X-Files set, to you to meet the X-Files writer, the showrunner. That guy's a showrunner, which for the neophytes, a showrunner basically is the writer and the executive producer of the show, that basically they say, this is how the show's going to go. These are my characters. Like, I'm writing my own TV show, I will be a showrunner for it if it ever gets produced. To be able to produce it, to say, this is who I want as my lead character and blah, 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 blah. And also sit in the writer's room. And you got to sit in the writer's room, right?
No, I basically,
on the set.
On the set, yeah. We went to this location somewhere in fact, God knows where it was. And they were like, you can't take pictures, you can't do this. I had to sign a form and give them my
I'll waiver
and everything. Yeah.
Right.
And I was so scared. And we were walking around Mulder's house. Was the first memory that I have. We went in this place and they were like, okay, they're filming somewhere else, so you just go and watch this. And it was them setting up a scene in Mulder's house. And all I could think, I was just stood there and they must have clocked me. I was just stood there thinking, oh my God, I want that poster. And I was just looking at stuff like, oh God, I need that pencil. I didn't need it, but I did. And then Jason's thinking the same thing. He's looking around like, I think they've clocked us. Well, maybe if we can walk around again, we might get it. And I'm like, yes, I need that bit of newspaper as well. I need this. I need that.
I know. It's fascinating when you're on one of those. I mean, even our Fragile Storm set was really, really cool because it was on a sound stage, which it just blew me away. Mm-hmm. And it's just walking around going, whoa, because I have very distinct memories of that. And I'll probably just do a podcast about that at some point in time. Just the thoughts that I had around what I saw and just how people made things. Because I just find that kind of stuff fascinating, but just watching them and on the Mulder's house and
oh God,
I'd have been just like a kid in a candy store because I just find that so fascinating. But that's everybody trying to do this. Yes, giggling like a little 12-year-old girl.
I was like a kid, and then we couldn't believe it when they took us round and they said, "Oh, these are your 2 chairs, and here's your radios." What the hell is that for?
They give you radios even?
Yep. And
so you could hear them talking about setting. Okay, we need to set up on stage 3. We need to set up lighting here.
So we were sat there and we thought, well, okay, we'll just wait a second. We'll just wait a second because maybe there's a mix-up and maybe we're not really meant to sit in them chairs. So we were just waiting. And then all of a sudden, Chris Carter just appears and he sits in the giant chair in front of ours where all the monitors are. And our 2 chairs are right behind his. So we spent the entire
Video Village.
Yep, in the entire day we sat behind him watching the monitors. Yeah.
That's great. And I think that's a great way to end this podcast on something that magnificent to me. I don't think it gets much better than that.
No, because that was what cemented Resurrection Films, because obviously I'd been drawn to Canada for years and years and years, and I went, and that happened. We got back straight away. Let's set this company up. Let's get some stuff done, because how can I not put myself on the line when that has just happened, when that's transpired and happened, which is basically my dream. That would have been my dream. Other than, getting married and having a kid, that was my dream, to be on the X-Files set and meet Chris Carter. And that happened, and they made that happen. So how can I not do this damn company and try and make some stuff?
And let's leave it with that, because I just tell everybody where they can find you on social media, your Twitter account, your Instagram's Resurrection Films, your Twitter account's probably Resurrection Films, right?
It's Inside Room 19 is Twitter.
Oh, Inside Room 19.
Inside Room
Twitter?
19, yeah, and Speakeasy Noir Cast as well.
Great. Well, this has been a blast. This has been way better than I thought it would be.
Yay!
It's my second time in, and there's just, I don't know. It's so neat because I love the final story of how you met Jason, and that just proves to me and to everyone else that, you put it out there, it'll happen. Dreams do come true.
Definitely.
Seriously.
Definitely. And also, I should just quickly mention,
yes,
Mark.
Please.
Mark was supportive of Fragile Storm as well.
Yep.
And he has had a full circle as well, along with Troy, of coming back around, looping around, and being able to create and be free with the company as well. So it's hopefully we've found a few people like Ian Stopforth, our artist.
Yep.
Kind of collected a few souls that maybe needed a voice, and we're just swooping around, grabbing them, and just puking their voices everywhere.
Very, very good. Well, it's been wonderful to talk to you, and I do appreciate you taking the time, especially on a Monday after you got home from work and everything. So
Oh, I
Again,
love
thank you
speaking
so
to
much.
you. I love speaking to you. I'll speak to you
I know.
anytime.
I know. And I love talking to you. Give my best to Street and Lily for me, okay?
I will.
All right, I'll talk to you later and I'll figure out the technical side of this. Ha.
Cool. Have fun.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.